Joining us now is John Bolton, the former national security advisor to President Donald Trump and former ambassador to the United Nations. He has a new piece out. It is published by The Hill, and it has this eye-catching headline: Erratic, irrational, and unconstrained, what a second Trump term would mean for America's foreign policy. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being back here on The Hill once again. We see the headline there. Explain your thinking.
Well, I wanted to try and describe for people what it was like to watch Trump make national security-related decisions. And I think probably the most important thing, apart from those adjectives in the headline, is for people to understand Donald Trump doesn't really have a philosophy as we understand it in political terms. He doesn't think in policy directions when he makes decisions, certainly in the national security space. It's really all connected with how things benefit Donald Trump. And what I tried to do in the piece is lay out some of the flaws of his decision-making because it can affect the substance of the outcome. And my real point is something that I also tried to make in my book, which is Donald Trump
Ambassador,
is not
hold that thought 1 second as we see Donald Trump take off. That's just what we have on the screen right there. What's interesting about this, as his plane heads north to New Jersey, when you fly in that direction here in Washington, to the right side of the window, the U.S. Capitol building and the White House, as Donald Trump heads back home. I apologize for interrupting. Continue on, please.
No, at least he's not flying the plane. He's probably not competent to do that either. But I think this is very important for Republican candidates to internalize. With a few exceptions, they have been reluctant to criticize Trump, or even when they have, they said we don't need the drama or we don't need the personality. It's the fact that the person himself, in any other time, and certainly going back to 2016, it's almost inconceivable he would have been nominated for president by a major party. And
but you know, Mr. Ambassador, you were in that
risk.
Yeah, you were in that White House for quite some time. I was covering you when you were there, and I didn't hear these concerns lobbed then. And as it relates to Republicans in general, they say, look, not a bad track record. No new wars. He left the Iran nuclear deal, peace deals throughout the Middle East. He reworked trade deals. I know you have questions and concerns about going forward, but when you look at the actual record, Republicans say not bad, right?
Well, let's talk about no new wars. He negotiated a deal with the Taliban that Biden later implemented that was a disastrous mistake for America and for our national security in the world. He did not put forward a really effective effort to squeeze the Iranians after he got out of the nuclear deal. He did not deal with the threat of terrorism from Iran effectively. He threatened the existence of NATO, and I think in a second Trump term would almost certainly withdraw from NATO. He was extremely erratic in his handling of the Venezuelan opposition in their efforts to overthrow the authoritarian Maduro regime in Venezuela. I mean, there's a long list here, and I think those who make these claims about what Trump did in his first term don't really understand how we got to the places we did, because many of the things they now give Trump credit for, he wanted to go in the opposite direction.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Ukraine, sir, and the ongoing conflict there and your thoughts. There was a story out in Forbes recently, and the headline there is 5 ways the Ukraine war could become a nuclear conflict. And I'm just wondering, sir, very briefly, if you believe that that is a possibility.
Well, there is a possibility. I think we've seen the Russians rattle the nuclear saber, and you should always take that seriously. But at this point, there's no evidence that that's in the cards. I think where it could be possible would be if Putin himself felt he was threatened with loss of power in Russia. I don't see that happening yet. I think the real question is whether the current Ukrainian offensive ends in gridlock and Putin takes advantage of that to get politically and diplomatically what he hasn't gotten so far militarily. And I'm worried about the Biden administration's staying power. I'm worried about the staying power of a lot of Europeans, too.
All right. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for your time as always. I'm sure we'll have you back again. Appreciate the time.